what they're doing is they said, we've never sat down before at the kitchen table and scratched out, even with little kids, what it is we must stand for, like, hey, truth, honesty, civility toward each other, what it is we must never do, lying to each other, striking each other, whatever it is in a family. Corporations are doing this right now with all of this extremism in our society. They're saying, hey, we got to stand for honesty. We got to be civil to each other in the break room. We can't bring politics in here, right? So sit down and do that exercise. Now, the next step is process. Because, and again, people hate the word process. Oh my God, it's boring. But if you want to have credibility in your team, you better have a process that says, I'm taking this seriously.
Welcome to the Spartan Up podcast with Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Race.
We are talking about overcoming obstacles. The same way we teach people to get over obstacles on the course, we will teach you here on the Spartan Up podcast to get over obstacles in your mind.
Create your own code of excellence. Frank Figliuzzi was the FBI's assistant director for Counterintelligence. He served 25 years as a special agent, and he wrote the bestseller, The FBI Way, Inside the Bureau's Code of Excellence. And he talks to Joe about character, core values, and how you can create your own code of excellence. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Orgain, clean nutrition to help you stay healthy, active, and feeling your best. New subscribers save 30% at orgain.com/pages/Spartan. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Eurofins Scientific, the official testing partner of Spartan. Eurofins EmpowerDX at-home COVID testing collection kit is the fastest, cheapest, and most sensitive test on the market today. Go to empowerdxlab.com/Spartan and use the code Spartan for 15% savings or free with most insurance.
All right, Joe De Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan. We're doing Spartan Up with Frankie Figs. That's what I just found out. I found out, you're like a senior, or were a senior director at the FBI?
I was assistant director at FBI, which meant that my division was counterintelligence. I headed up all espionage investigations across the government after a 25-year career as a special agent.
So not just intelligence, but counterintelligence. So you were like the real deal.
Counterintelligence is a fancy way of saying spy catchers. We caught the foreign spies operating on U.S. soil.
That's absolutely awesome. You know, all my in-laws were FBI. I married into a whole FBI family out of the Boston office. And the crazy thing is, since you're Italian, I'm Italian, I grew up in an Italian neighborhood, you have an Italian nickname, Frankie Figs. All my neighbors were wise guys, like really bad wise guys.
Yeah.
And so when I married my wife, I had to go see my neighbor, who at the time was the head of the Bonanno organized crime family, and just explain to him that, listen, Courtney and I are getting married, her father's a Fed, in case you see a car around. I didn't want to get killed myself.
Wow.
So
he may have seen that as an opportunity. Wow. Yeah. Talk about a mixed marriage. There you go.
That was crazy, but really good people. You know, again, growing up in that neighborhood, I didn't have the opportunity to know a lot of FBI. And I don't know if it's just my in-laws. Certainly they would want me to believe this, or if it's just a good family, good people.
Yeah, actually, you're touching on the book that I've written that's now been out for close to 3 months, which says this: look, even within an organization like the FBI, where everyone goes through a background investigation, polygraphs, right, extensive vetting, they're still human beings and they still have flaws, but yet the FBI operates every day at this exceptionally high level of excellence. So my book is an attempt to say, you don't have to spend 25 years surrounded by these top talent, cream of the crop people to learn how they preserve what matters most and deal with stress and crisis every day. This is my attempt to say, I learned some things about these great people. They're human like everyone is. Here's the 7 C's of the FBI way that'll get you through just about anything in your life.
And those 7 C's, when you're hiring at the FBI, do you find people that have them, or do you develop them, or both?
The goal, it's both. The goal, of course, is let's be a gatekeeper. Let's recruit and retain people who at least have some form of code. The first chapter of the book, the first of the 7 C's, is code. You've got to have some core values in your life, or you're going to go south really quick. So the FBI tries its best to hire people who can say, I do have a code. Now, it's nice if they have the FBI's code, right? But they will ingrain that in you from day one. At the academy, they tell you you are now part of something much bigger than yourself. That's a large part of the book, and it's a large part of succeeding in life, right? It's not all about us. It's about what we bring to the table for others and as a team.
But the code, is the code, is it something that they picked up, growing up in a family? Like when I think about, again, that neighborhood I grew up in, organized crime, they had a code too. So is it any code we look for?
No, good point. We get our code from various places. For some, it's growing up in a devout religious family. For others, it might be passed on by parents, coaches, developed in your early life. You want the code to match the team and organization, or you're going to have problems within your team. You'll have problems within your life. So the trick is to have leaders who exemplify the code and have credibility so that the rest of the team will adapt the code as their own. You can talk about a La Cosa Nostra family where the capo is ensuring that everybody's on his code, right? Or you could talk about FBI senior leadership ensuring, as I had to do in parts of my FBI career, Joe, in parts of my career, I was in charge of certain internal affairs functions. I had to deal with discipline inside the FBI, preserving that code, had to make some really tough decisions about some really good people who had some really bad judgment at times.
So it really, when you use the word code, is it synonym for like a standard? Like the standard doesn't change. This is our set of standards that we live by.
Yeah, exactly. So I encourage, when I consult with corporations, for example, on this, I say, look, it's an exercise in sitting down and saying, what is it that we will never do because it is so antithetical to what we stand for? And what is it that we must do at all costs and preserve? And you'd be surprised, Joe, how many companies can't articulate what it is at their core that makes them tick, that they have to preserve. And they're afraid to do something about consequences. That's another 7C, when somebody varies off of that. So the first chapters of the book set up code and then clarity so that everybody understands on the team what it is. And the concept of conservancy, that's another of the 7Cs. What's conservancy? Hey, this is a team sport, right? It's not someone else's job down the hall to preserve our core values. It's each of our jobs. Even on a national level, I think we're wrestling with, hey, wait a minute, we're on different sheets of music. What do we have a common code and core value in this country? Sure we do. It's time to get back on that. I go through consequences, compassion, credibility. Credibility does not mean being perfect. Some people say, hey, Frank, have you written a book about how perfect the FBI is? Absolutely not. Credibility isn't about being perfect. It's about owning up to your mistakes, transparent about what you're going to do to fix it. That's what the FBI does. And then I end the book, Joe, with the last of the 7Cs, which is called consistency, because the theory is, and the FBI does this every day, in the middle of a crisis, it's human nature to fight or flight, right? To go, oh my God, I've never seen this crisis before. There must be a different way to handle this. And that's the wrong thing to do. Consistency means clinging to a battle rhythm in your life that will get you through everything. Stick with what got you, stick with your core values. I tell the story in that chapter about when I was the on-scene commander of the first anthrax murder in the United States, Boca Raton, Florida, AMI building, three stories of anthrax-filled building where a guy had died. We could have said, we've never seen an anthrax murder before, or we've never processed a crime scene inside an anthrax building. We don't know what to do. Instead, we clung to our values. What is this? It's a crime scene. Is it a hazmat crime scene? Yes. Are we trained in that? Yes. So we're going to go in and process a hazmat crime scene. You can do that in life by simply consistently clinging to what you believe in and what your training is.
I love that because, we just went through COVID. Most of us have dealt with tough times before. And so rather than saying this is, and it was unprecedented in many ways, but at the end of the day, we've dealt with stuff before, right? Just go back to I like battle rhythm.
Battle rhythm will get you through it. People sometimes tell me, Joe, hey, you talk a lot about this consistency, battle rhythm. Isn't that rigidity? Isn't that inflexibility? And I say exactly the opposite. It's that rhythm of doing things that gives you the freedom and flexibility to handle things however they come at you. And yes, COVID was one of those things. COVID, I think, exposed, for me anyway, exposed an eroding resiliency in our nation. Hey, we've had mass pandemics in our history before. We've had World War where we sent our brothers, sons, everybody off to war. What are we losing resiliency? And if you consistently say, hey, there's some things we've got to do to get through this. Let's do it as a team. You get through it a lot faster and a lot better.
I like that. And I like the Conservancy, that everybody, first of all, you got to get everybody to buy in. I just happen to be going through this exercise at Spartan right now where, I'm the founder. So I created it with a few people around me, and then you get bigger and bigger and bigger. And maybe that message gets lost. It gets muted. You go through COVID, everybody's working from home. It gets muted even more. And so I'm now trying to get everybody back in the office, which is a challenge.
Yep.
And also going through the exercise of, hey, this is what we stand for. Like, we haven't changed, but somehow the boat makes lefts and rights, and I don't know how how that happens.
I think you're right to zero in on COVID as something that's going to cause most teams to re-examine values and get everybody back on the same sheet of music. But I come back to the book and the FBI. Look, the FBI is 35,000 people in 60 countries. The FBI has 56 offices in the United States, 60 offices outside, 35,000 people. What does this come down to get everybody rowing in the same direction? Leadership and constant drumbeat of values and enforcing those values so that you can have teachable moments with your team, not to embarrass people, but to say, hey, I see a trend here. Let's talk about this because it can't be happening. In the FBI, we have something called bright lines. The one thing that you cannot do because it could be an existential threat to your organization. In the FBI, the one bright line is lying under oath. If you lie under oath as an FBI employee, you are useless to the FBI moving forward. We can never put you on the witness stand again. That is clearly articulated, as are certain rules about other things. Driving, under the influence in a bureau vehicle, right? There's no surprises, Joe. You do this, this is going to happen.
Problem is, right? You tell me. The problem is when you want to adhere to those stringent standards, which I do, and you don't want those standards to change. It's a very small percentage of people. You watch the movie Hoosiers or whatever, right? And the coach walks in and immediately gets rid of the star player because he's not adhering to the set of standards that the new coach wants to put in place. And we've seen it in movies throughout the decades. There's just not a lot of people that want to play at that level.
We'll be right back to this interview in just a second, but first I want to talk to you about Eurofins Scientific. They are the official testing partner of Spartan. Eurofins EmpowerDX at-home COVID collection kit is the fastest, cheapest, most sensitive test on the market today. All those postponed races, meetings, and gatherings have been frustrating for many of us, and we're finally racing. Testing is the ticket to getting together again. Getting together with family, friends, coworkers, and most of all, our friends who are out there on the course racing. Some countries and states still require that travelers show proof of a negative COVID-19 test before they can enter. That's if they want to avoid a mandatory quarantine period. That's where Eurofins comes in. COVID-19 testing with Eurofins is easy, and it's just 3 steps. Step 1, order the kit. EmpowerDXLab.com/Spartan. One more time, that's EmpowerDXLab.com/Spartan. And if you're a Spartan Up listener, use the access code SPARTAN for a 15% savings and have the kit delivered directly to your home. Step 2, collect your sample, and you can do it at home. Return it with the included prepaid shipping label. And here's the best part. Step 3, get the results within 48 hours by email. Eurofins is one of the world's leading clinical diagnostic companies with over 30 years of infectious disease testing. They provide fast, accessible testing to those that need it most. They were ranked #1 by Insider. Support this Spartan partner, and they'll support you. Go to EmpowerDXLab.com/Spartan and use the access code SPARTAN for 15% savings. Or it's free with most insurance. One more time, that's EmpowerDXLab.com/Spartan. I want to talk to you a little bit about our sponsor today, Orgain. Orgain has all kinds of products to fit a Spartan's active lifestyle. Nutrition shakes, protein powders, meal powders, bars, and even almond milk. Orgain products are food-based and full of organic vitamins and minerals that taste delicious and provide maximum nutrition. You can save 30%. Spartan Up listeners will save 30% on new subscriptions when they sign up at Orgain.com/pages/Spartan. One more time, that's 30% off of new subscriptions for Spartan Up listeners if you go to Orgain.com/pages/Spartan. Now back to the interview.
There's not a lot of people that want to play at that level.
Yeah, I fully understand that the FBI has like 10,000 applicants for one special agent position. So they have the beauty and luxury, so to speak, of recruiting top talent that's going to mesh, hopefully, with the core values. But I have seen in my internal affairs functions, I have seen toxic FBI offices where a leader of an office, particularly the farther away you get from Washington, right, you'll get a toxic leader. And that office can turn on a dime and go south. And that leader may need to get transferred or removed. And you gotta make that call.
Even if it hurts the organization for a period of time because you lost that body.
It's a reminder to everybody that, hey, this guy wasn't in charge. There's something greater here, and it's the organizational values. No one person is in charge.
Not even the boss sometimes, I'm finding.
But the concept is we belong to something greater than ourselves, right? And I used to tell people when I used to head FBI offices, sometimes I'd have, a little issue and somebody come up and go, hey, this is my SWAT team, or this is my evidence team. And of course, I'm the head of the office, right? And I go, hey, let me tell you something. It's not your SWAT team. It's not my SWAT team. It's the FBI SWAT team, and I'm the FBI's representative in this territory. Understood? It's this concept of we're all part of something bigger than ourselves.
By the way, I went to a wedding once in Switzerland, a good friend of mine, and they had a very short time to build this facility on top of the mountain. It was nearly impossible to do. It was snowing. There was no way they were going to make the deadline of the wedding. But the owner and the master builder that was putting this whole thing together for the folks getting married, he bought T-shirts and sweatshirts for everybody that talked more about, like you said, the bigger purpose, the bigger mission of making these 200 people that were coming happy. And once everybody bought into that bigger mission, the job got done on time.
You just hit on the head in a very small, micro way. An example of we've got a mission, it's bigger than us. There's a physical reminder, a visual reminder of what we're doing. Now multiply that by, 1,000 for the FBI and its personnel who carry around these things called credentials with just 3 letters on them, FBI, right? And I tell the story in the book on credibility in that chapter, as a brand new FBI agent, I had to flash those visual credentials and hope to God that I was going to be able to stop a fully loaded commercial aircraft in Atlanta Hartsfield Airport from taking off because of a terrorist threat. And I'm 20 something years old, Joe. And you want to talk about, a brand, you want to talk about a mission, and flashing a visual that reminds everybody of who you are. It's those three letters. And I didn't know if I was going to stop. It was a Lufthansa flight. It was a German national in charge at the terminal. He looked at me like, "What? Who the hell are you?" And it is about the mission and the power you have when you're part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah, and thanks to all the folks that came before you, right, to create that brand and all the good movies.
Well, TV and Hollywood certainly don't hurt when it comes to recruiting. Although I will tell you, there's a flock of young people today who see CSI and Criminal Minds, and they all want to be either crime scene technicians or profilers. And sometimes there's a dose of reality that's needed there to say, hey, that's not exactly what it looks like. But I have to tell you, I was impacted by this. I tell the story in the first chapter of the book. I was an 11-year-old kid in Connecticut watching a steady diet of real news stories out of New York City where the FBI was taking down mob families, and TV shows like the FBI with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., right? And I was like, this is cool. I want to do this. I wrote a letter at age 11 to the head of the FBI in Connecticut. Said, hey, I'm an 11-year-old kid. I want to be an FBI agent someday. The guy writes me back. And he says, here's what you need to do. Check with us in about 15 years. So, and it happened for me. And because of that, I always talk to young people who are interested in doing it.
It's funny how I even think back to, whether Navy SEALs are supposed to be in movies or not, or write books, or that really stimulates a lot of folks, like it stimulated you as a young person to change their whole life and go in a direction. So, I'm sorry I'm going down this rabbit hole. I would imagine there's folks at the FBI that are actually working with Hollywood, right?
There's an entire office. Even back in J. Edgar Hoover days, Joe, Hoover realized the power of Hollywood, and he played it. He played it. And even today, there is a unit at headquarters in Washington called the National Publicity Unit. And they work with TV shows and Hollywoods. They'd rather be part of a plot development than watch something horrible happen on a TV series, right? So they do cooperate with that. And in fact, they cooperated with me on my book. There are stories in this book that have never been allowed to be published. And they saw the message of the book and they said, hey, we're going to let you tell these stories. Of course, there was a back and forth about, hey, don't name the country, don't name the person, but I got it done. And yes, there's a mission there. You mentioned about, should Navy SEALs write books or not? I did something by writing this book that I thought I would never do. I always swore that I would never be the guy who wrote a book about his FBI career. I don't like the concept of it, but I have to tell you, the country's in a place right now where I saw lots of the public misperceiving the men and women of the FBI. And I don't, this book is not a political book, but it is a book that says, hey, all of that aside, the rank and file, men and women of the Bureau who get up out of bed every day simply trying to protect us, their mission has been eroded by misperceptions, or some of them valid, by the way. And I wanted to say, this is the FBI I spent 25 years at.
No, and that makes sense. Tough when you have to reconcile that with yourself. So what can people do if they want to run their household or their life like an FBI agent, right? And they want to follow some sort of code and make sure everybody's got a little conservancy going on, and they want to be consistent.
Right.
Give me some tips, some quick tips.
So, on a very basic level, I have had parents come up to me and say, and I never anticipated this, Joe. This was really meant to be more of a corporate team book. But I've had parents come up to me and say, we're reading this book as a family. I said, really? And what they're doing is they said, we've never sat down before at the kitchen table and scratched out, even with little kids, what it is we must stand for. Like, hey, truth, honesty, civility toward each other. What it is we must never do, lying to each other, striking each other, whatever it is in a family, Corporations are doing this right now with all of this extremism in our society. They're saying, hey, we got to stand for honesty. We got to be civil to each other in the break room. We can't bring politics in here, right? So sit down and do that exercise. Now, the next step is process, because, and again, people hate the word process. Oh my God, it's boring. But if you want to have credibility in your team, you better have a process that says, I'm taking this seriously. So what do I mean by that? You can say you stand for a lot of things, but until your employees or your family members see a process attached to it, hey, we're going to have a family meeting when, Sister Sally has done this, and we're going to figure out what to do about this. There's a process here. Companies will get up and say, we don't stand for sexual harassment. They got no program in place, Joe, to deal with it, or any program for employees to report it. So that's not credible. The other thing the FBI does really well on this Conservancy thing is throughout your career, particularly for leadership career, you have no choice. You have to be part of internal affairs at some point. And agents, of course, like, my God, I did not sign up to investigate my colleagues. Oh my God, I did not sign up to decide discipline on the guy down the hall from me. But you know what? When you start doing that as a team, you go, I'm part of something greater than myself. I'm responsible for preservation of values. And if the guy next to me is doing something really stupid, I apparently have an obligation to point that out to him before it gets any worse. That FBI does that from day one.
I don't know if you had to do it all over again. Do everything the same? Anything you regret? Anything you want to highlight?
It was a wild ride and an adventure that I'd recommend to everybody. It's not for everybody. It is a vocation, not a career. It means that you sacrifice. I talk about this in the book. I have colleagues who sacrificed their lives for the FBI, killed in the line of duty. I point that out to people. But in terms of things I do differently, you know what it almost always comes down to, and this sounds cliche, but it is communication. There are times when things went really bad because I did not communicate with clarity. And I tell leaders, boy, get this right, get the message right. Don't send that email out without someone else looking at it, right? Craft your words carefully. It's about the delivery, just as it is about the message. And then one of my chapters, Joe, is called compassion. And I don't think there's enough compassion in leadership. And people say, boy, there's a chapter in your FBI book about compassion. Yes, there is. You cannot be just that enforcer. You've got to show there's humanity there, and you have to see the human causal factors in the team members that you have that may have caused them under stress to do something inappropriate.
Hard to do, hard to have. Sometimes I got to catch myself, right? Because we're the stoic brand. I try to carry that stoicism through the entire organization. Get in the friggin' office. I don't care about you're right, but you're right. You're right. It's a check and balance. By the way, I think the pendulum can swing too far either way, right? The organization can get too soft and get off brand, whether it's the FBI or Spartan or whatever. And before you know it, it's a quagmire of red tape, and nobody wants to say anything. Nobody wants to upset anybody, and we got work to do.
Yeah. And the FBI is a massive bureaucracy filled with rules and regulations. And if you take the human side out of that, oh my God, it's filled with red tape and paperwork, right? So you've got to work hard in an organization like that to bring humanity into the process. So for example, in internal affairs, we were required, before we disciplined somebody, to write out not only the aggravating factors in what they did, but the mitigating factors. What stress is this guy under? What is going on in this girl's family? This woman is under stress. Did we cause this stress as an organization, right? There's some introspection that goes on. You've got to work hard to get a dose of humanity into an otherwise cold system.
How do people get the book?
It's available anywhere online that you buy books. Of course, it's on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and Books A Million, etc. And you can also go to my website, frankfigliuzzi.com. Follow me on Twitter @frankfigliuzzi1. It's become a national bestseller. It's on the USA Today list. I'm excited about the message in the book, and I hope people glean some value from it.
And then if they want to follow Frankie Figs, this is the one Frankie Figs you could follow, and you don't have to worry about getting shot.
Amen to that, man. Thanks for having me, Joe.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Spartan Up Podcast. Spartan Up is your partner in resilience for mind, body, and spirit. We're here 3 days every week. Tuesdays, you can find Joe De Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan, interviewing biohackers, business leaders, authors, and athletes. Thursdays and Saturdays, catch episodes from our DECA, Endurance, Trail, Combat, and La Ruta series. Do you know someone who needs a little nudge? Maybe they could use some motivation, tactics to be stronger, healthier, happier, more successful. Tell them about our show. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment. We want to know who's watching and who's listening. Thanks. See you next time. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Orgain. Clean nutrition to help you stay healthy, active, and feeling your best. New subscribers save 30% at Orgain.com/pages/Spartan. This episode of Spartan Up is brought to you by Eurofins Scientific, the official testing partner of Spartan. Eurofins EmpowerDX at-home COVID testing collection kit is the fastest, cheapest, and most sensitive test on the market today. Go to empowerdxlab.com/Spartan and use the code Spartan for 15% savings or free with most insurance.